Welcome back to the Painting Coach, and in this tutorial we're going to be finishing off Glutos Orscollion. This is part 2. If this is your first time on the channel and you want to learn how to paint your Warhammer miniatures, learn tips and tricks and also learn about all things miniature related, then please consider subscribing and make sure you hit that bell so you get notified of all my latest content. So let's get going with part 2 of the Glutos Orscollion video. So you can see I've already painted a lot of this. And the colour I'm going to use is Screamer Pink. So in terms of thinning it down, just a smidge of water. Now I'm also going to paint things like all the cushions on the palanquin with the Screamer Pink as well. And just nice and simple. Just paint it on. You may need 2 thin coats, but depending on how thick you've done it. If you're wondering about the gold is all in part 1 of the video. So if you've not watched part 1, watch the end of this one first and then go back to that. So get this done. Like I said, any other cushions on the palanquin, get them all done with the Screamer Pink, all the drapes as well. And then when we come back, we'll pop a little shade in there. Once the Screamer Pink is done, we just want to take some Drakenhoff Nightshade just to do some spot shading. So we're not covering everything, we're just going to take our time. Where we've got the little folds, make sure I haven't got too much on your brush, just going to paint it into those folds. Create some separation as well along the gold parts. Nice and simple, nice and straightforward, just like that. And then also we've got all the folds here as well. So what we're going to do is we're just going to paint along them. And I can see there that I need to go and add some more Screamer Pink in just to cover up some of the primer underneath. So again, all that was detailed on part 1 of the video. So if you've missed that, make sure to check it out after this one. So just work that in there all the way around. And then when we come back, we'll have a look at highlighting. When it comes to highlighting this piece, really nice and simple. And again, do this for all the cushions on the palanquin. Just take some pink horror. Again, make sure you haven't got too much on your brush. And what we're looking for is we're just looking for those kind of raised parts where the material is tucked in. Again, this is kind of like a subtle highlight. If you wanted to blend that, you could do, but I'm just happy to highlight these kind of areas where it bunches in. And then when you've got the kind of the drapes and you've got that nice hard edge, you can just run the brush down it like that. Nice and easy, nice and straightforward. So get all that highlighting done. Like I said, remember to do all the other cushions as well. And then when we come back, we'll do the icons here. The next bit we'll do are these little icons of Slaanesh that we've got there. So the colour I'm using is Grey Seer. Now I've thinned this down quite a bit because in my pot it's fairly thick. So make sure you haven't got too much on your brush. And just twist your brush so you've got a good point on it. And then what we're looking to do is we're just looking to paint over the raised areas. Of the Slaanesh icons. Any mistakes you make, it's not a huge issue. You just go back in and tidy up with the colours from the previous step. So as you can see, this isn't covering particularly well. So I'm just going to do a couple of coats just to make sure that the coverage is pretty good. And we'll come back and highlight it next. Highlighting the little icon that we've just painted is going to be really straightforward as well. We just want to take some skull white and just catch the kind of the raised areas. So all the bits that are kind of just sticking up. You can see my, did I say skull white? That's the old paint colours. White scar is what I meant. So use white scar. Mine's fairly thin. So in terms of coverage, I'm probably going to use, a couple of coats. Because once this dries, it'll blend into to the model and blend into the grey underneath. See, I just made a little mistake there. That's easy enough to fix. Just with a little bit of the Screamer Pink that I've still got on the wet palette. It's still wet, so just a little bit on your brush. And you can just work it up to the raised area there. So get that done. Make sure you're happy with the kind of strength of the white, and then we'll get this bit of the canopy will be done. So this bit, the hook here, we'll do that as part of some of the marble, which we're going to start next. So for the marble, this is the effect we're going for, the initial effect, and you can see it's kind of quite streaky on there. So I'm going to show you how to do it, and that actually helps us when it comes to the the kind of the veins within the marble. So what we're doing is we're going to take Basilicanum Grey contrast paint. We're going to mix this 1:1 with contrast medium, and what we're going to do is we're just going to paint it on, and it's important that you make long strokes. So you're not stabbing at it, but just long strokes with, you can see I'm using this is a synthetic brush. It's not an expensive brush or anything. Just, make sure you get it all over there. Now if you want to kind of increase that marbling a little bit, then you can just clean the brush off and just pull some of it away and get some of those interesting shapes in there. We also want to paint this dude, because that'll give us some of the definition. And the other thing we want to do as well is we've got the snake that holds up the canopy. That should be white from when you started it, so you just want to cover that with this Basilicanum Grey contrast medium mix as well. So get that done, and then we'll come back and we'll start to work in drawing up the marble and getting those kind of veins done. So let's move on to the marble then. So that white scar that we've got on the palette should still be wet. So what you're looking to do is you're just looking, as you can see I've done on the other parts there. This is really simple and really effective, but just make sure you've got a good point on your brush. And then you're just looking to draw some jagged veins across the model. And where it really helps you to kind of sell this effect is if you make sure that the veins kind of from this part here run across into this part there. So just work your way around. Again, nice thin white paint, and you can see what I've done with the marble on the other parts of it as well. Really simple to do, really effective. And then in order to sell the marble effect, again, this is a real straightforward bit of work, but I've just got some Mechanicus standard grey. I've thinned it down quite a bit, so you can see on the palette there it is quite thin. Good point on your brush, and then you're just looking to follow the kind of the trace of some of these white lines. Don't be afraid to put some grey on its own as well, just here, but generally we're just looking to follow the outline. Above or below, it's up to you. So get all that done, and then we'll come back and we'll move on to the next stage. So we'll do the kind of the snake next. So for the snake, if it's a little bit untidy, then you can just use some Corax White to go back over it and tidy it all up, which I've had to do in some places. And what we're looking to do now is we're looking to just highlight the things like the head of the snake just by using some white scar. Just catching those most raised areas, things like the teeth. When that kind of dries down, it'll blend in quite nicely and give you a nice highlight. And the other thing we're going to do as well is just the eyes. Just going to dot the middle of them there, just like that. So do both sides, and then we'll come back and we'll just colour in those eyes next. Painting those eyes is nice and simple with just a little bit of Aethermatic Blue contrast paint. All we're going to do is just drop it in over the eyeball like that, let that dry, and we get a pretty easy effect there. So that's those, the snake done. So there's a few other bits on the palanquin that we may want to look at doing similarly with the white, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the guys pulling it first, and then we'll come back and finish off the metallics on the palanquin. The first thing we're going to do on this chap is the claw. It's kind of like a darker purple colour, and we're going to start off with the Xereus Purple for that. So what we're going to do, just thin it down a little bit, make sure it works into all the kind of the recesses that there are on this claw. You can see it's covering okay, but it's not perfect, so We are going to give it a second coat, so just make sure you do all of the claw all the way up to the bit where the armour kind of stops there, and also these horns that he's got poking out of him. And we'll come back and we'll shade it next. Once that purple's dry, you can just take some Nuln Oil and just going to pop a nice coverage over all the purple. Make sure it goes into those recesses, into those joints. Just make sure it doesn't sort of pool too much. We just want to darken the purple down. We don't want big thick pools of black. So get that sorted, let it dry thoroughly, and we'll come back and we'll highlight it next. Once you're happy that Nuln Oil is dry, we're going to highlight it, and we're going to go back to the Xereus Purple, and this is just kind of pick up the raised areas, just catching on, making sure we're not painting into the recesses where you've got the shape of the claw. And same for these horns, we're just looking for those most raised areas before we go in with an extreme highlight next. So just work your way around, make sure you're happy you've got that kind of more purpley colour in the raised sections and the sharp edges, and then we'll come back for a final highlight next. To highlight the purple areas, we're going to move on to some Genestealer Purple. Now, this is quite a thin paint and doesn't cover fantastically well, so you may have to sort of just take your time and go over the sharpest edges again. And that's what we're looking for, is just the kind of sharp edges of the claw. Now, there's going to be some areas where you can use the tip of the brush along the angle just to get a nice sharp highlight like that. I'd probably go back in and tidy that up a little bit because it's a little bit thick, but just work your way around the claw, catching all those raised areas, and then when you're happy, we're going to come back and we'll move on to the silver, the dark silver colour on these chaps. The darker metal I'm going to be using is Iron Warriors, and I'm going to be using this on this kind of big bit of armour here. So just taking my time while that gold is finished to make sure that there's no spillages and we don't have to go in and repair that. So just take your time with this step, working your way around. There's also going to be these kind of big chains as well, which attach the harness and the bridle, I guess it will be. I'm not a Hedonite of Slaanesh, I'm not sure what the exact terminology on it is, but if we'll use this like a bridle on a horse, so put that on there. So work your way around with that. Don't forget things like these clasps around the ankle and anything around the wrists as well, and then we'll come back and give it a little highlight. To highlight the darker metal, I'm not going to worry too much about the carapace armour because I think that looks okay as it is, but for some of the other bits I'm just going to take some chrome from Vallejo Model Air, not thinned it down at all, and I'm just going to look to highlight some of those raised areas there, just to add a little something different into the metal. So hopefully that's all in focus, just to add a little bit of shine on there as well. And then any other bits, so maybe we'll have a look at doing perhaps some of these studs here. There's quite a few of them, so just take your time, just adding that little bit of highlight on to add some reflection. So go around and do as much of that as you want, and then we'll do the straps and the skin, and these chaps will be done, and then we've just got a few bits on the palanquin, and this guy is complete. For the straps, I'm going to use a colour I'm not sure I've used before on the channel, but one that is a throwback to colours, like I was calling that white skull white earlier. This one's also a throwback, so it's Snakebite Leather contrast paint, and I'm just going to use this to paint all the leather straps and get a nice kind of coverage on it. And if it's too light for you, you can always give it a second one or give it a wash just to darken it down. And on the second guy who hasn't got any clothing, you'll see the little stud in there. Just paint it all in, Don't let it settle too much, and then you can just go and paint that stud with some metallics once it's all dry. So work around all the straps with that, with the Snakebite Leather contrast paint, and we'll come back and we'll do the flesh next. So let's make a start on the skin, and the colour we're going to use for that is Kislev Flesh, just thinned a little bit. I'm using a fairly big brush just to cover this as quickly as I can. And one thing I'm not too concerned of is when I'm working over the lighter area like I am now, I'm not concerned if the... oh, let's brush it, not my friend today. I'm not too concerned if the coverage is not even. Obviously, where I'm going over bits that I may have got some of the metallic on, or where I've got some of the darker colour here, I will spend a bit of time, but normally I'm not that concerned with, on this skin in particular, if it's not 100% covering, because I'm going to be doing quite a bit of work around it anyway to get that coverage. So just work your way around, get that down, one coat and then two coats in some places, and we'll come back and shade it next. To shade down the flesh, we're going to use a 1-to-1 mix of Guilliman Flesh and contrast paint. And make sure not to have too much on my brush. And pretty similar to what we did earlier when we were doing the marble. Just make sure we move it. We don't want to let it kind of just pool in one place. So just work it all the way around the legs, and then let it dry thoroughly, and we'll come back and highlight it next. Once that Guilliman Flesh and contrast is dry, you're going to go back to the Kislev Flesh, and I'm going to layer up some of these muscles. So I'm just going to look to catch some of these lines. Now this is why I wasn't concerned before about getting that really even coverage. I'm leaving this in the recesses as best I can. Now this guy, I used Flayed One Flesh. Now I'm only going to use Flayed One Flesh to highlight some of the scars on this guy. And so I think it's just nice to have different skin tones on them. So just work your way around. And again, this Kislev Flesh is fairly thin. So once it dries, it's going to blend in nicely to the rest of the skin. So it's going to work my way all the way around the model, getting this on, and then we'll come back and highlight the scars next before we add some kind of redness to the model. So hopefully that's clear enough for you. And we're just highlighting these kind of raised areas here as well. So nice and easy, nice and straightforward. So get that done, and then we'll come back and do the scars. Once you've got that and second coat of Kislev Flesh on, I'm going to go to some Flayed One Flesh, like I said, and just really important to get a good point on the brush for this. So I'm just pulling and dragging back. And then what I'm looking to do is just paint the scars. So there's quite a lot on this guy, a few on the other one. Don't worry too much if you kind of slip over into the other skin, because what we're going to do is we're going to add some colouring around it just to offset and enhance the scars. So just work your way around getting them all covered like this. Don't forget the chest and the head, etc. And then we'll come back now on the next stage just to add some decoloration to the skin, some scarring. So to do the discoloration around the scarring, I'm using Volupus Pink, and this is mixed with 2 parts contrast medium. So what I'm looking to do is just line the inside and the outside of the scarring with this kind of pink colour. And because it's fairly thin, the effect will be subtle, and as it dries it'll blend in, but it'll just help kind of reflect the soreness of the skin. Now if you accidentally paint over anything, it's really easy to fix. You just go back to that Flayed One Flesh to just reinstate some of it. So we're looking to go around the scarring, but also make sure we're in focus. We've got the kind of bits here as well where the arm meets. So if you paint it on like that, you give your brush a quick clean off, and then you just paint away the top of that, and it'll just help that blend there as well. So work your way around both these chaps, doing all the scarring like that. That's these guys done. We're now ready to attach them to the palanquin and then finish that off with the few final steps. So we're nearly in the kind of the home stretch now. There's just a few little bits and pieces to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to paint up all the bright metallic, and for that we're going to use chrome. So in terms of what we've got this section here. So you can see the chrome covers it fairly nicely and quite, nice and thin, so it runs into those recesses. So just work that all the way around, obviously being careful not to cover any bits you've already finished. And the other thing I want to paint with the chrome whilst we've got it on the go, we've got a lot of kind of plates and crockery, I guess. Like all these here, we've got that shisha pipe there. So just want to paint all those with this chrome. Take your time, get it all, covered in a decent amount. You should be able to do most of this in one layer, but it may take you more than one for some. And then we'll come back, we'll have a look at some of the cool stuff we're going to do. So to shade this all down, we're going to use some Aethermatic Blue. Now it's important that we don't use too much of this. We don't want it to we just want it to kind of tint the silver, just like that. We don't really want it to sit there and hang about too much. So just tint all the silver with this. Then I'm not going to do this on cam because it's going to be a little bit difficult. I just realised that the focus isn't great on this, or the focus is okay, but it's just a little blown out. So just bear with me while I kind of do some more bits. And you can see there, so that's a little bit too much. I just want to take it and just pull this around so that it's really, really thin on the silver. So you want all the silver with the Aethermatic Blue. Like I said, nice thin layers. We don't want it settling anywhere. And if you do any mistakes like that, you can just wipe it off with your finger. Nice and easy. So work around doing that on all the bits of silver. Like I said, not too heavy. Then any little bits that you think, you want to just pick up some of the brightness with some chrome, go back on there. But otherwise, this is pretty much getting there. We've just got one more colour to do. Add everything to it, and it's done. The last thing we're going to do before we stick it all together and suitably base the model is we've got a few, or the undercarriage is kind of wood. So all we're going to do is going to paint this Dryad Bark. So I think with hindsight, I'd probably leave the wheels off if I had to do old Glutos again. I can't see me doing him again, but yeah, I'd probably leave those wheels off. So just work your way around, get that done. And that really is the last bit. Apart from going and just checking, I can see I need to put a bit of gold there just to correct a mistake I've made. That I'm going to do. So I'm going to base him. Stick everything together, and then we'll have a look at him on the turntable. So there we have it, Glutos Orscollion is done, his palanquin and bearers are complete, and he's ready for the tabletop. This has been quite the epic paint job, so I really hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please leave a like and a comment down below. And don't forget, if you'd like to win this model, you can do by liking any of Goblin Gaming's social media channels before the 31st of March 2021. If you'd like to support the channel, then you can do by using the links in the description. There's a link to my Patreon where you get exclusive access to me on our Discord. You also get a monthly live frequently asked questions session, as well as some exclusive content on Patreon itself. There's Goblin Gaming itself, where you can get up to 20% of all your wargaming needs, not just Warhammer. There's also my Amazon recommended equipment list. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.